Our vision is to be the best operator for our brand in terms of profitability, in terms of brand standards, all of those things. And I do believe the opportunities for that can and will come.
Welcome to P&L, Priorities and Lifestyle, with your host, Rob Schultz. Rob is the founder and president of Schultz Wealth. All opinions expressed by Rob and his guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of Schultz Wealth Limited. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for investment decisions. Please refer to our website for more information.
Welcome everybody to P&L, Priorities and Lifestyle. I am your host, Rob Schultz. And today I have John Schissler. John, franchisee extraordinaire, has some experience behind you now, but today we're going to talk a little bit about how you got started and all that. Really, really great to have you on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah. So, I was sitting here trying to think. I don't think we've had, we're getting up to about 70 podcasts, something like that. I don't think we've ever really talked enough about the franchisee journey of entrepreneurship. So I'm really excited to have you on because I want to talk about this entree or this way to get into business ownership. It's very popular, very successful. I'm sure it's still fraught with peril, but there's some training wheels that go along with it that can help a lot. And that's what I'm hoping we can talk about today. Just kind of how you got into it, how being in a franchise has helped you, what some of the traps are, the challenges, the opportunities, stuff like that.
It's all the good stuff.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, let's do that then. So, John, you got to Texas as soon as you could.
That's right.
Or it sounds like maybe you got to Texas through, you married into Texas.
That's
Is
right.
that correct?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
your
wife
is non-negotiable in the wedding contract.
Okay. All right.
Had to move to Texas.
I've never seen that in a prenup, but I'm not shocked to know that it exists.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So you met your wife where in Alabama?
In Auburn.
Okay.
Yeah, so I went to school at Auburn, and then my wife grew up in the Metroplex and went to Auburn for an internship after she graduated college. So that's how we met.
Okay. And her internship was with the franchise that you're with, which is Chicken Salad Chick. Right?
So it's actually through a campus ministry, but that led her to meet with students at the first Chicken Salad Chick that started in Auburn. And so that was just her main meeting spot with students.
No kidding.
And so just fell in love with the food. And this is a person who hates mayonnaise and decided that chicken salad would be the place that she would go eat with students, and fell in love with the food. And so after that internship ended, she got a job doing marketing with the corporate office.
Okay.
But it was led there from a passion of the restaurant and the food itself.
Okay. How about that? And y'all have how many stores now?
So we now have 7 stores open.
Okay.
And then development rights to open 4 more over the next couple of years.
You're all in at this point.
Oh, yeah. There's no turning back.
That's great. And we were talking a little bit earlier about it, and I was talking about, the franchise, type concept and stuff. And you just said it's like, well, I'm not even sure I knew what a franchise was when I signed up for one.
Yeah. The whole thing was a massive learning curve. For us, we'd always wanted to do business. I'd always wanted to have some sort of business work for myself. Grew up in a somewhat entrepreneurial family.
Okay.
And so my wife and I, just with her internship, the importance of people, we'd always talked about businesses, being involved in something where we could be with people, make an impact. And her time there at the corporate office really showed us what this brand in particular, Chicken Salad Chick, what their culture was about, their orientation towards caring for their people and communities. And that really resonated. Now you have to get into the details of it is a franchise, you're starting a business, and we had no idea, but we really liked what the core principle of the business was about and the opportunity to be in a business where you're in the business of people for the employees and then the people that come into your door as guests. And so it was a big learning curve. Neither of us had worked in a restaurant until we opened one. We didn't know what a franchise was until we signed our first one. The whole process from the get-go was just one big learning curve. But we were blessed to have some great people along the way to teach us, to show us, and then just kind of at that point, just jump in and go.
Yeah. So when you jumped in and got ready to go, give me some of the advantages that you saw right away of being in a franchise support structure.
Yeah, it's paint by numbers. And that
Okay.
is, I'm not an artistic person. My brain is linear. And I think um, through things in systems. And
Okay.
so getting into a franchise works well for that because it is a system. You buy into it for a process, for a recipe, for all those resources. Fortunately, Chicken Salad Chick, when we signed, had a really good foundation for as young as they were. They invested heavily on that aspect of training, development, the team that they send out to walk through how you not only prepare the food, which is important, but how you run the business, thinking about things like inventory, staffing levels, really looking at your P&L,
Okay.
where you can make money. So they have these great consultants and trainers that walk you through that the entire just step by step throughout the entire process. So really it is, it's plug and play. Here's the manual, you follow it, and it's proven. And so you should be successful that way. So that part is great because it really becomes about just operating a process. You're not trying to worry about coming up with a new menu scheme or marketing pictures. You're really there to operate a business. And you can focus your attention on what's important, finding the right people, taking care of them, building the business that way.
So when you talk about that, I can certainly see the advantages, because, and I love the analogy of just kind of paint by numbers, set yourself in a process and follow the process. The funny thing is I can think of a number of entrepreneurs who would be their worst enemy in that type of system, because there are probably two types of entrepreneurs. I don't know, maybe we can talk about it and see whether you agree with me or not. But there's one that can absolutely adopt a process that's tried and proven and go through the process and do the hard work and succeed. And then there's the other entrepreneur who absolutely will never do that, is just way too, entrepreneurial, I guess you could say, and won't follow a process, rather, just kind of is going to go by the seat of their pants and either live or die by it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I completely agree.
Yeah.
I don't think the franchising model is for everybody.
Yeah.
Again, the really creative type who wants to start from scratch and go through that process. Like, I have rules I have to follow. And if I don't, then I am in trouble and I'm in violation of my franchise agreement, and they can revoke that. But that's why franchises are appealing for other entrepreneurs, because I want somebody to give me those rules, give me somewhere to play within.
I know so many entrepreneurs that do not like rules at all. Like, sometimes I'll run into an entrepreneur and I'll be like, yeah, you work for yourself because you are obviously unemployable. You're just somebody who just cannot go by those, have boundaries, I guess, from the standpoint of rules, guidance, procedures, have to figure it out the hard way. Some of those become hugely successful because of that, if you could call it a flaw, or just basically the way their personality is. But the franchise process seems like just the kind of an in-between, kind of like almost a hybrid.
It is. And what I've found, especially as we've grown, is that the franchise model provides you, and this is true with Chicken Salad Chick or any other concept, it provides you with that how-to manual. You use their, in our case, recipe, their logo. But as we've scaled, the organization that we've built really has become our own. And so the company my wife and I operate is J&M Hospitality. And our employees,
that's a real business of your own. That's
right.
A whole different deal.
We have our own logo. We have our own website.
Cool.
Our employees work for J&M Hospitality. They don't work for Chicken Salad Chick. And so as we've scaled, there really has been this aspect now of a little more of that pure entrepreneurial side of things, that as I build my business, it is different than how other franchisees build their businesses. The way that we structure our benefits, or the way that we do employee development, the way that we, again, I invested in a website and other things that really maybe don't matter in the scheme of operating a restaurant, but that are important to us for the culture. So really starting to get this side of it now, where we really are building our own business outside of just operating that franchise location.
So it got you started, but yet at the same time, you're able to scale,
Yeah.
and your scale is allowing you to become much more entrepreneurial, much less of the, I guess, corporate oversight
Yes.
as you start becoming a business of your own.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, and that's cool. I like that.
Yeah.
That's so they can get you started through rules and processes and so forth. Then you can start to have success because you worked hard at it. I assume it was a lot of hard work.
Oh gosh, yeah. I've got plenty of those stories.
and then as you were able to get to this point, which you started in, when was it?
2016 was our
2016.
First store.
Okay. So yeah, 8 years, and now it's completely different than what it was before.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's, the beauty to the franchise, again, it does go back to, it is a kind of paint by numbers. The widget may change. If I look at other brands, even if I get into home service type franchise, if you get into fitness franchises, the bulk of that may be different, but at the core of it, it's the same. It's the process, it's the people, it's all those things. And as we've grown, recognizing that, the people that I put in place, the systems, the processes, like easily being able to adapt that to some other concept. So that's where the scale side of franchising is nice, is that you're not having to spend all this time, effort, thought, resources on the creating the development. You're able just to simply grab that next little chunk and pull it into what you're already doing into your ecosystem of business operations.
Yeah, that's awesome. So tell me, so we talked about kind of what the franchise can do for you as you start to, as you become a franchisee. What are some of the things that they can't do for you, or some of the things that you found that you had to maybe learn the hard way?
Yeah, that's a really good one, because I tell people this a lot. When we first started, having real no knowledge of what a franchise was, what they were supposed to do, I genuinely thought that they did everything. And the idea of like having to have the employees, like my own employee handbook. I mean, because again, they work for me, they don't work for corporate. So structuring the
so
business,
all that risk.
all that risk,
Yeah.
it all flows through me. And so there's things like that the franchisor, they don't want that, and they don't need that, but it's on me to create that process. And they give some guidance, but at the same time, they don't want to put themselves in a situation where they tell you what to do, and it's state by state. So things like how to manage the employees, that side of things. A lot of the big business decisions, I think, they're different. So how to run my accounting processes or how to do that, the franchisor can't do that for you. I mean, they can again tell you, here are your cogs, but it's up to you to keep up with that and manage that. So it's really the back office of the business that I had to learn. It really is fully on us to have that. And that's why it's unique. Every franchisee in our system, and I'm sure in other systems, does it a little bit differently. We all have different goals and motivations. We've got some franchisees in our system that want 1 or 2 stores. That's all they're going to do. I have the desire to grow and scale. And so thinking about how I structure the back end of the business is very different than they might think about theirs. I'm thinking about it as I need this foundation to grow. So that part of structuring the business and how we operate, again, the franchisor, as long as we're following their recipe, we're following their brand standards, the rest of it, it's on us to determine, make those decisions, invest those resources.
Well, that's quite a bit. I mean, if you think about it, because the financial side is crucial, so important. Kind of a finance guy. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
I think it's really important. But yet, that's on you. Employment, man, hiring and firing employees and keeping clear of regulatory issues and stuff is a big deal.
Yes,
it's a really big deal.
Yes.
Insurance. I mean, you have to buy your own insurance. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. And decide what kind of benefits you're going to have. And
that's right.
All that kind of stuff. So, all that absolutely is on you. I can see that. I bet that was interesting trying to learn all that.
Yeah. It's like you don't know you don't have something until you need it. And you realize, we should probably have this. kind of coverage in place and didn't know about that, or didn't think about, having this benefit for somebody until it comes up. And that's part for us, that business process is kind of learn on the go.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, very good. So you've already told us that your desire is to grow, but then obviously different people, different strokes for different folks, for sure. Kind of what do you foresee? Sounds like you said you're at 7 with four
more
developed and to develop, and then where does it kind of go from there for you? What are you kind of thinking?
It's really, I told people early on that I view myself as an opportunist.
Okay.
That I just start checking doors, and when one opens, go through that one, and then start checking doors and go through that one. And so a little bit of the future is that I'm starting to just check doors and to see what's there. But I really believe in what we've been able to put together right now in terms of a team. And the first few years of the business were so hard. I tell people too, especially with restaurants, our concept in particular, it's not complicated. It's very hard. And so there's this element of you just have to be willing to put your head down some days and just to grind through it. And part of that is just because we're dealing with the general public. The employees that typically you recruit to restaurants are not going to be the same ones that you recruit to a wealth management firm. And so there's just challenges there that you just go through that beat you down at times. Not complicated, hard. And so getting through that, especially coming through COVID years where nobody really knew what was happening, we built some good business muscle, and some great systems that I feel like now in that franchise model can be adapted to almost anything. And so for me, that opportunity is, okay, then what is next? If it is expanding through looking at new markets with this brand, I feel confident in our ability to manage that with the knowledge we have and the systems we have to do that locally. If it's looking at other brands, again, knowing that it's plug and play. Yeah. Here's our system and process for how we do HR payroll. Here's our process for how we process invoices.
Yeah, you do that all the way across. Yeah. You already have built kind of your back office or your headquarters.
Yes.
And you can just plug this other stuff in now.
Yes. Yeah. So looking to take advantage of that too, because again, the last 8 years have been very difficult. And so the thought of just stopping for me, that's painful. I feel like I've gone through, I've gotten bloody, bruised, beat up, and like, okay, now I'm ready to take that and put it on a growth trajectory, and be able to use that experience to reach the next level.
So you're about to springboard is what it sounds like.
That's the hope.
Yeah. Because you're right. You were still building like when COVID came along, and you were that was a bad spot to be in. Yeah. As a restaurant in COVID for sure.
And I will say that being in the franchise system, the pandemic showed me the benefit of that world. So when everything shut down and everything changed, there was no playbook. So everybody was scrambling to figure out, how do we survive? What do we do next? Well, the benefit of the franchise system, it provided us some oversight. Corporate was dealing with all of our food contracts. I didn't have to worry about, was I going to get a truck or not? They dealt with that. Some of the changes in labor, they have a full-time VP of HR who was monitoring those things daily and giving us updates. We had a weekly call with all owners in the marketing department, ideas to get food sales to increase. What can we do to share ideas and change? And so having that was instrumental in a massive way in us being able to bounce back as quickly as we did, as opposed to the independents who didn't have big contracts in place for their food, who didn't have the resources to share marketing ideas and to have all that stuff in place. And they really hurt. And so I look back on that time, as hard as it was, like to me, it just validated the franchise model to have that in place where you're not on an island. You've got 50 other owners and a whole corporate team dedicated to your success, and it helps.
Yeah, big support group there that probably, made or break it for the most part. Yeah. Yeah, we talk a lot on this show, and I talk a lot all the time about risk in business. Um, and I have this thought, and I think it's true, that entrepreneurs, for the most part, just don't truly recognize the risk that they're taking.
Mm-hmm.
That it's something that Austin and I, here live, eat, and breathe risk. We understand risk at a very institutional kind of level, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's easy just to not realize how much risk there is in like one location or just one business. And this franchise type concept is definitely a risk mitigator.
Yeah.
Big time.
Yeah.
Big time risk mitigator, which, there's a lot of stuff out there that can just get you that you have no control over.
Right.
COVID being the most obvious example.
Right.
And being able to have that support group and be able to have somebody that's gonna help you through it is huge, because we still don't know what's on the horizon, right?
Yeah, how to navigate all the health regulations and changes and all that. Have that in place. I would look at that. Where do I start? And you don't have to think about that, because somebody's done that. My favorite story, if I can share it, and little risk story.
Yeah. I love risk stories.
The not knowing the risk and how beneficial that is. When my wife and I opened the first store, we were 2 or 3 months in. We were both putting 80 hours in, just learning the business, just figuring it out. And I had the opportunity to meet with a franchisee who's based here locally, but his company has 500 locations across 4 or 5 different brands.
Big operation, yeah.
And met through a mutual connection, and I'm sitting in his office 3 months into this thing, questioning every decision I've ever made, but also feeling pretty confident about what we're getting. And so here's this guy, 500 locations. And the first things he asked me, he said, "Why would you do this?" I said, What do you mean? He's like, "Why would you take an unproven brand?" Because at that time, it was brand new. Had 30 locations, maybe 40. And he's like, an unproven brand into an unproven market. They had one store in Louisiana, but nothing further west really than Mississippi.
Oh, no kidding.
And you pointed out the fact that we had zero experience either. And he basically was saying, here's a guy who knows this business. He has 500 restaurant franchises. And he looked at that as the risk was way too high to take. And he asked us, why would you do it? And if in that context, I didn't know any better. And I'm glad I didn't, because if I had known the risks, and I tell people now, if I had known then what I know now, I wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have done it. I mean, you look at how many brands have come into DFW and failed because they think it works, or how many startups, go under. And we just came in thinking man, we'll just go work hard and it's going to be fine. And now I look back man, I could have gone.
That was crazy.
Yeah, really.
That was nuts. Yeah. No, I agree. I think early on for me, I had some moments like that. I sit there and go, if I knew what I know now, nope, wouldn't have done it. It's too much pain, too much risk. That's funny. And I guess that's good at a certain point within, your journey, so to speak, because maybe just ignorance is bliss, and you just cut through it with hard work, and, and then, however, you start to learn and mitigate and so forth.
And now as I look to grow and to scale, and I talk to other groups, I know the questions to ask. I know what to think about. And I do have something to protect at this point.
Absolutely.
Prior to this, if it doesn't work out, I go back, get a job somewhere else, I'll be fine. Now we've built this business, and so I want to protect that and to grow that. And so I do think about things more like that guy did.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's normal. That's absolutely the right way to approach it.
Yeah.
Is to, continue to shift and change the way you make your decisions as you have, like you said, more to lose. But at the same time, I love the fact that you're continuing to want to grow and take a certain amount of risk, because it's worth it, right?
Yes.
It's absolutely worth it. Yeah.
Thinking about talking to different people in business, there's different levels of the business where it's a lifestyle business,
right?
Or it becomes more of that wealth creation business. where it changes a little bit again. So I think back to if we had my wife and I could stop now, just operate this business and be happy. And that's why we got into this, is for the lifestyle, to have the flexibility. We have 2 little kids now.
Yeah.
To take my daughter to school every day, go to all those events. Like, that's great. That's what we want. But the next iteration of that, I still think that exists, but it is a different mindset now, and how we approach the business, mitigate the risk where we can, but take advantage where we are, and then scale it where it's now low. Early on, it was me and my wife, right? The company name it's us, and it becomes not about us, and it becomes about building something that does last. That even today, it's far more dependent upon the people we have behind the scenes that are in the stores running things or in the office than it is about what we do each day. And I think that motivates me to do more of that, to be able to build that organization that in some ways runs itself.
Wow. Yeah. Sounds like you have a fantastic perspective on what you're doing. That's very impressive.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So, you're growing your business within, like you said, a concept that was brand spanking new almost when you started. But at the same time that you've been growing and changing and shifting, your brand has been growing and changing and shifting as well, because I didn't know what Chicken Salad Chick was, in 2016. I don't think I even knew what it was in 2020. It was still kind of so new. It's still kind of new, but yet it's starting to take off, it sounds like.
Right.
So what's changing within the organization, the franchise that you're working in, and how is that affecting your ability to grow and to achieve your goals?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it is unique starting with a brand as young as Chicken Salad Chick was when we got in. They were still in that infancy stage where they have some systems, but as they've been able to grow and scale. So our first inventory count sheets were just an Excel spreadsheet that the VP of Ops had created and put together. And part of that's resources that they lacked. And now we have a great third-party software that my managers can use their phone and take inventory, and it calculates everything for them based on the invoices feeding in. So there's a sophistication that has come along with that growth that, as from an operator's perspective, and especially from my perspective, trying to grow and scale makes it easier for me.
Yeah.
I can do all that, see all my locations from my phone and all those metrics.
That's cool.
So that's helped immensely. And when the brand started, like many young brands, you've got the 500 store operator that I mentioned. Like, he's not going to invest in this company yet until it's
apparently not.
Yeah, right. He wants to know that. And there's a stat that I think only 20% of franchise concepts make it past 100 locations. And so for the brand to get past that hurdle was a big step for them. And so as they've scaled, they attracted a lot of people like me and my wife that maybe didn't have experience, or maybe didn't have, maybe some restaurant experience, but certainly not to scale. And so as they've grown, they've now the brand is attracting some franchise groups who do have large portfolios that are familiar with what a brand like a Yum Brands or somebody like that the systems that they have. And so these groups are great because they can help bring in some of that feedback to the franchise community with us owners. Of these are the things to be thinking about, things that I may not even know exist. So what questions to ask, driving the franchisor to think about these things, where to invest. So as we look to grow and scale, it's big. Now that's the challenge is some operators get into the business because the 1 and 2 store, right? They just want to keep things like they are.
And I can see where those folks, probably this new trend, I guess, with the larger operators, there could be a little bit of a conflict there.
Yes, and there's kind of that we're losing that small mom and pop feel, which is true to some extent. But again, as I operate a business, to me, the goal is to operate a successful business. And so these resources that the franchisor now has, as they're able to get more sophisticated, just help us do that better. There is always that tension to keep what makes, and this brand too, Chicken Salad Chick, it's very special. The culture that exists, how the story started with Stacy starting this in her home, how they built it. It's really the American dream story. And so that resonates with people. So you don't ever want to lose that. And so when you come into the stores, though, the stores today look essentially the same that they did back when we opened and in 2012 with the first one. So from a guest perspective, that doesn't change. And that I don't ever want to lose, because then you lose the core of what makes this brand so unique.
Yeah, but they all eventually kind of rebrand a little bit?
They do. And I'm sure there will be a part of that comes down the road.
I mean, there's got to at some point, right?
There will be.
Yeah. But for now, what y'all have works really well, it sounds like.
And that's as the private equity group that bought Chicken Salad Chick back in 2015. One of the things for them that was important was to keep it. It's working really well. We don't need to come in and change everything up, change the paint, the carpet, do all that. When it sold again in 2019, same thing. It was the executive team made it very clear. This is our process. This is what we believe in. This is what makes it unique. And if you change too much of that too soon, you lose that. So as I grow my portfolio, it is important to me to protect that, because I see that as a competitive advantage for us. I think where you can lose some of that, and this is the franchise model where you don't have that control. You are relying on others, the executive team at the franchisor's office, to make decisions about the direction of the company that will absolutely impact you. That for us is a big part of making sure there's trust there with the franchisor, open communication, and the executive team at Chicken Salad Chick is fantastic, and they're very open about those things, and we trust the direction that they're heading. And it gives me the confidence to want to continue to grow without losing that special part of the identity with this brand that makes it unique and why people come.
I would guess that some of these larger operators would probably start kind of requesting or almost demanding, more advertising, more of that kind of thing, which would be good for you, I would suspect. And are they pressing a little bit more for that?
There's definitely a lot of conversations around that.
Okay.
And it's the brand, because it started in the Southeast and it's grown concentrically since then. So they're now entering states where when people hear chicken salad, they probably think green lettuce with grilled chicken, fried chicken, something on top.
Yeah, I forget that there are other parts of the country that don't really know what chicken salad is. Like, I don't know, like Minnesota, do they eat a lot of chicken salad?
We're about to find out. I know they're going to start selling that market pretty soon for development. They've got some inquiries in there.
Okay. Well, I mean, it could work. I like cheese curds and, frozen yogurt and stuff.
It goes back and forth.
Yeah. Okay.
But there is an element to your point where when you get into those markets where it is not just part of their everyday diet, marketing messaging and how we teach people about the brand, not only, hey, we exist, but hey, this is what chicken salad is.
This is good stuff.
This is what the product is.
At least it's not like pimento cheese, right? Because for sure, I think there are parts of the country that don't eat pimento cheese, right?
They're missing out, though. We have some on our menu.
Good stuff.
I did about 50% of the time I'm in the store.
Yeah, I love pimento cheese for sure. Yeah,
but that'll come. And that's my wife, having worked in the marketing department, saw kind of where the brand started. But it does rely a lot on us locally too, which is why the operator model that the brand has is important. We truly believe in that community. You got to be out there. And so again, the big operators, they can bring some of that big knowledge, but they also have to be willing to say, this brand, it is not a McDonald's. It is not a KFC. There is a community aspect to it. We need to be willing to kind of adopt that as well. It's okay. Maybe it is worth us. We need to be more present in the community, sponsoring local things, going to the events, having your team members go out there and do things. So I really hope they play off.
I think that makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
It's not only good for the community, it's good for your employees too. They're able to, just be able to be a part of something cool.
Yes.
That's and you're right. Some of those bigger brands, they're not interested in that stuff at all.
And people still feel our stores, people still talk about them as their location. It's my chicken salad chick. And I think that was one of the things that stood out to us early on, introduction into the brand, that still blows me away every day, is people really have this community ownership of that store. And that is something that's pretty unique. They treat it as like it is a local spot. And they love to tell their people when they come tell us, I brought my friend here for the first time, like they discovered it. And my wife always talks about that. People love to be the one to discover our brand and to introduce new people to it. And that just doesn't exist other places.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't guess so. Yeah, that is pretty cool. Well, so it's going to be hard to branch out. Let's say that you start to grow and you start to do other franchises and stuff. What's going to be? I think it's going to be hard to find that same kind of magic in some of the other ones, isn't it?
Yes, it will be. And I've looked at some brands over the past few years, and just nothing has stood out. And it will be tough because I don't think it exists like we have now. So this is where I really have started to lean more into the culture that we're building within our own team and my wife, the company that we have, and leaning into that. So again, the employees that we have, the team, they tie in to that. So if we can follow that same model that Chicken Salad Chick did in the stores and bring that into the business that we operate, we still get to keep a piece of that remains core to our identity, that we can now, if it is another brand that's different, the operations might be a little bit different, but the people, as they come into the way we do things, the way we operate, that will remain the same. And for us, that's a big part of why we do that business, is for that. So our goal is to keep it connected through the business that we've now built. And if we do bring other businesses, other companies into that, then it ties into our culture.
Yeah. So you'll create the culture within that franchise, that piece of the franchise that you have. I like that. Yeah. That's really cool. Well, good. So, chicken salad, definitely the South more than even Texas, I would say.
Yes.
Being in Florida, Alabama kind of guy, that made sense. When y'all shifted over into the Dallas-Fort Worth area, because of your marital contract, so to speak, and ended up in Texas. Did you see any culture kind of shocks, I guess you could say, from the standpoint, I guess not only from the standpoint of the franchise, but then also just, moving your family to Texas?
Yeah.
What was kind of any challenges there?
There was definitely challenges.
Okay.
Fortunately, when we moved here, my wife and I didn't have any kids yet, and she was familiar with it. And we just came to work. That's really why I came. And so just settle in and get to it. The question of how the brand fit, and even, again, I grew up in the Southeast. And so that's the hardest part for me moving to Texas was no trees.
Yeah.
Especially in Fort Worth where we are. You can look and see for miles, and that's great. But I'm used to pine trees lining all the roads. And
it is a huge difference. Shelly and I lived in Charleston, South Carolina when I was in the Navy, and it's just the opposite. I'd be driving around going, "Oh my gosh, I don't know where I am. I can't see anything because of all these trees everywhere."
Claustrophobic.
Yeah, it was just the opposite for me. So I know what you're saying. Yeah. So no trees. So you're just in a desolate wasteland all of a sudden going, "Wait, why am I here?"
Yes. But Texas is still very much the South, and in culture that we found. And again, I didn't know to ask the question back then, like, do people in Texas know what chicken salad is? Never crossed my mind. Now I do think about that. Like, fortunately, people do. I think the biggest thing we noticed, corporate would tell us when we opened up, most of their stores would serve 2 urns of sweet tea for every 1 urn of unsweet tea.
Yeah, you got to flip that.
And so here we had to learn pretty quick, like, no, sweet tea's still not very big in Texas yet. So we're two unsweet for every 1 sweet. I'm
definitely an unsweet tea guy.
Me too.
Are you? Okay.
Yeah.
So he converted you.
Yeah, I'm trying to keep the sugar content low. We do have a good sweet tea, but that was the biggest shift. There was still some educating. We had some people come in the first year or so that would ask, so how can I get this? Do I get it grilled, and then didn't really understand what chicken salad was. But enough people from Texas we found have either vacationed in the Southeast or they had seen it on a menu somewhere.
No, I'm a native Texan. I grew up on chicken salad,
Yeah.
pimento cheese, and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. I don't know what, I think it's pretty familiar here, but I can see if you could get, further west or even further north, or even like I don't even know about the Northeast.
Yeah.
Whether I don't know what they eat.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm looking forward to letting somebody else determine
Yeah.
whether or not it
You'll
works
let them
there.
at this point. You'll let them
Yeah.
test the waters before you go.
We pioneered out here. We did.
Yeah, you're good.
Put our time
You're
in.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as you grow, you don't necessarily see yourself going outside of this general geographic area, mainly because of that. And also, I would guess that operations get more complicated
Yes.
when it's a different state or whatever it may be, right?
And that's right. And so if we do look at expanding outside of this market, it would be with this brand because we know the operation so well. If I look at other brands, I would want it in this market. And part of that's just my philosophy of business. I am very hands-on.
Okay.
I spend a lot of time in it. Again, an operator at heart. So I want to be there, touch it, know it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just harder to do when you're further away. And it creates an added layer of complexity and cost. It'd be like opening up for you here. You've got a second branch here. And like that means extra rent. It means extra all that. And for us, same thing.
Yeah.
Not only the location cost, but now I've got to have, there's flights back and forth. And if I have to send somebody out, there's hotels back and forth. And there's the complexity and the cost sometimes is greater than what it's worth to do that. So you have to make sure, and this is too where the franchise model really is about scale when you talk about wealth creation. And so to go open up 1 or 2 stores in a new market, it doesn't make sense. It would have to be a pretty big splash to offset the overhead that it would take to operate something. That's the challenge too, is finding a brand that already has density in place or that you could go buy into a new market to develop that. And so for me, that's the question now too. I'm at this inflection point. We will continue to develop. Getting started with no experience, no brand was going to let you just go buy into 10 stores. You got to start, earn your keep, so to speak, earn your stripes. But now as we've gotten that development process down, I think acquisitions becomes the next target for me to be able to go find the existings. Again, because I feel like we have our back office built out. And that's the operators that are the biggest in the markets. Like they grow through acquisition. Yeah. It's easier, it's cleaner. Banks like it better, less risk because it's proven model. You've got years worth of data to look at.
Yeah.
So for me, that's kind of the next frontier too.
Yeah, more through acquisition. Traditionally, I don't know your industry to a really high degree, but this is just something I've noticed, and maybe right or wrong. Traditionally, it seems like some of the clients and people I've had in franchise, they would open the franchise and then they would do property at the same time. So they would have the franchise and then basically the franchise would help them pay the note on the property. Now they have the property asset and they're building scale. They're building, I guess you could say, value or wealth through the property type acquisitions. I haven't seen as much of that recently. I've seen more franchisees, building the great system like you've done, and then economies of scale just through the franchises themselves and not property. What are you doing? Are y'all doing any property work?
Not currently.
Okay, that's what I've seen a lot of here recently. Okay.
Yeah, I've looked at it, and some of it's market dependent. So there are operators on our system who've done that.
Yeah.
DFW is just so expensive. So I really do think the cost of dirt matters for our economic model.
Yeah.
And then it's also just limited capital and choices on how to deploy that. And one of the things that they really looked into it a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And really was driven by this idea that I can build wealth, build another business basically through owning the dirt, being the landlord. And I think it's great, but it also just distracts me from operating a good business. And so they had to step back to say, if we just become the best operators that we can be, and that's our goal now as a company, our vision is to be the best operator for our brand. in terms of profitability, in terms of brand standards, all of those things, then I do believe the opportunities for that can and will come. I think where you get into trouble, it is a very different business model.
Yeah.
Where you now shift your attention to that side of the business as opposed to just operating the business really well. And some of that's brand dependent. If I got into some of the traditional QSRs, that standalone restaurants that they require, that maybe makes sense. But for us, right now with this brand, it doesn't. And
Yeah, that makes sense to me. That's kind of how I've operated too. With our clients, we're pretty agnostic about it. I mean, in certain situations, it makes tons of sense to own the dirt, especially like a one location type, like a manufacturing facility or something like that, where when you sold the business, you could have a lot of control over whether it continues to stay there and you could collect rent and some things like that. But man, it's so specific use, when you're talking about a food type, a restaurant type situation, that I just see risk there.
Yeah. And there's a great market for that. I think that's why I got distracted by that shiny object.
Yeah.
That there is a market, an investment market, where groups like to buy these standalone properties. It helps when they're national tenants,
Yeah.
And so from a franchisee perspective, they may not look at me the same way as they would a Starbucks or some corporate group.
Mm-hmm.
So your cap rate changes a little bit, the deal changes a little bit.
Yeah.
So it's still interesting. And there are other avenues that I do think about that are ancillary to what I do now. Like, how can I get into those that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I can't necessarily go upstream and start raising my own chickens.
I don't think I'd want to do that. I don't want to do that.
But looking at ways to build off of what we have, maybe that are outside of that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's really exciting, John. Sounds like y'all are in a great place right now, about to kind of launch off into a new adventure with even greater growth, with all the knowledge that you got to learn. A lot of it the hard way.
Yeah, most of it the hard way.
Yeah, certainly through COVID, I can imagine. I appreciate you being on today.
Yeah, thank you.
Anything else that you kind of want to mention? Anything you think we didn't talk about that you think is insightful for people that may be looking at a franchise as a way to go?
Yeah, I think you touched on it earlier. I think people often look past franchises, either because, like me, they may not know enough about them, or they view it as just kind of skipping the whole run a real business side of things. And I would encourage people to revisit that. It does provide you a ton of autonomy. There are a bunch of resources that are at your fingertips. So it is an entry point into owning a business that does provide the opportunity to scale, which is beneficial for people that are growth oriented, or just to operate a good business with where you are with the support. Maybe you don't want the pressure of owning that. And there's food, there's home services, there's every sort of franchise imaginable to fit the desires that somebody has or the passions that they have without the risk of having to go create all this from scratch. So looking at that, I think is something that is important to consider if you're looking at business. The flexibility that my wife and I have now is probably why we got into this, to be able to take that time off to be with our family. And this model provides that ecosystem. But then also to ask the right questions, think about it. You don't have full control. And are you willing to accept that somebody else in some ways controls the destiny of the brand as a whole? But it's a great way to start a business for us. It's been fantastic, and I highly encourage it.
Yeah. Well said. Well, I really agree. That's a great way to look at it, and appreciate you being on and talking about your journey. If somebody, John, wants to get in touch with you and ask further questions about kind of what y'all have done and kind of pick your brain, what's a good way for them to get in contact with you?
I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, so if you just search for John Schissler on LinkedIn, you can find me there, or we have a company website, jmhosp.com.
Okay.
And you can go there and connect with me that way too.
Great. Okay. We'll put that in the show notes. And everybody, we appreciate you listening in today. Encourage you to get a hold of John if you're interested in the franchise concept of getting into business ownership. Also, don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have any questions about things from a wealth management standpoint, or if you have somebody that you think would be a great story for us to have on the show. I hope you enjoyed it today. Everybody, have a great week. Take care.